Hi, good morning everyone. My name is Dr. Himanshu Goyal and I will be taking care of this QT subject. So, in the previous lectures, we have discussed about the decision making theory, right? We have discussed two methods. The first one was Maximax and the next one was Maximin criterion, right? So, in this video, we'll be discussing about the criteria of realism, which are also called Hurwitz criteria, right? So we'll be discussing this Hurwitz criterion. So what this criterion suggests that, first of all, right? This criterion suggests that a rational decision maker should be neither completely optimistic nor pessimistic. It means that it says that the first two approaches are of no use, right? The first one was an optimistic approach, then next one was pessimistic approach, right? So both the approaches are of no use. They are redundant and therefore must display a mixture of both. So therefore, this he said that it should be a mixture of both. So he gave this Hurwitz criterion or criteria of realism, right? Hurwitz, who suggested this criterion, introduced the idea of a coefficient of optimism denoted by alpha. So he gave a kind of notation called coefficient of optimism, which he denoted by alpha, right? To measure the decision maker's degree of optimism, this coefficient lies between 0 and 1, where 0 represents a complete pessimistic attitude about the future. That means if it is coming out to be 0, then it's a complete pessimistic. That means it's not going to happen, right? The next one is if the value is 1, right? It shows that it's a complete optimistic approach, right? Thus, if alpha is the coefficient of optimism, then 1 minus alpha will represent the coefficient of pessimism. Obviously, 0 plus 1 is equal to 1, right? If 1 minus alpha will be the coefficient of pessimism, right? So the approach was like this. The Hurwitz approach suggests that the decision maker must select an alternative that maximizes criteria of realism or is equal to maximum in column plus 1 minus alpha minimum in column into my minimum of every column, right? The working method is always summarized in the slides. The first, what you have to do is you have to select a coefficient of realism which is alpha, right? You have to select a coefficient of realism which is denoted by alpha. Then you have to then you have to find out the coefficient which is between 0 and 1, right? A value of 1 is always 100% optimistic and value of 0 says that 100% pessimistic, right? Compute the weighted averages for each alternative. Then you have to find out the weighted averages for each alternative. Then you have to select the alternative with the highest value. Then you have to find out the alternative with the highest value. And weighted average is equal to alpha maximum in row plus 1 minus alpha minimum in row. This is how you find the weighted average of the entire process, entire matrix, I would say, right? I have discussed one example as well, we were discussing using this, Thomson Lumber Company or right? We have discussed that particular in how we calculate maximax, and we have discussed maximin, right? Now we'll be discussing the criteria of realism and what answer we'll be getting. So you will be talking about that. For a large plant alternative using alpha is equal to zero point 0.8, and that means that the value of alpha is zero point 0.8. We have assumed that the value of alpha is zero point 0.8, right? So what will be getting? We'll be getting zero point 0.8 into 2 lakhs plus 1 minus 0 0.8 into my minus 1 lakh 80,000. So I'll be getting 1 lakh 24,000, which is criteria of realism, right? So, so this is the weighted average of the first row. Similarly, you have to calculate the weighted average of the second row, which is for the small plant alternative using alpha is equal to zero point 0.8, zero point 0.8 into 1 lakh plus 1 minus 0 0.8 into my minus 20,000, right? You'll be getting 76,000, right? And for do nothing, obviously it's 0, so you'll be getting 0, right? Then what you have to do is you have to select the maximum what you have calculated. For example, in our case, we have calculated the weighted average for all the three alternatives, and the maximum will be 1,24,000, which is, so we are saying that we should construct a large plant and will be getting a 1,24,000, will be getting a 1,24,000 as revenue, right? So this is the decision which we have taken using this criteria of realism, or which was given by Hurwitz, right? Or also known as Hurwitz criteria. The last one, or probably the fourth one, I would say, it's not the last one, sorry, right, is equally likely or Laplace transformation, right? So it says that since the probabilities of states of nature are not known, right? So we are talking about the decision making under uncertainty. That's why we are taking Laplace criterion, right? That's where we are saying that the probabilities of states of nature are not known. We don't know the probability of happening favorable market, and we don't know the probability of happening a unfavorable market, right? It is assumed that all states of nature will occur with equal probability. That is, each state of nature is assigned an equal probability. As states of nature are mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive, so the probability of each of these must be 1 by number of states of nature. The working method is summarized as follows, right? What you have to do is written in the slides. So first of all, you have to assign equal probability value of each of state of nature by using the formula 1 divided by number of states of nature, right? First of all, in first case, you need to find out the find the average payoff for each alternative, right? Then you have to compute the expected payoff for each alternative by adding all the payoffs and dividing by the number of possible states of nature, or by applying the formula. Probability of state of nature J is equal into my payoff value for the combination of alternative I and state of power J, right? Select the best expected payoff value, maximum for profit and minimum for cost. This criterion is also known as criterion of insufficient reason, because except in few cases some information of the likelihood of occurrence of states of nature is available. So they are saying that the I mean the probably the possible reason is not available, therefore in majority of the cases this equally likely method or Laplace transformation is not used, right? In our case we have calculated we have first calculate first assigned a number of equal probability to each of the states of nature. So 1 divided by 2 is 0.5, that means zero point 0.5 into 2 lakhs, and 1 minus 1 lakh 80,000 into 0.25 0.5, sorry. So probability of, then we have to compute the average by 2 lakh into zero point 0.5 is 1 lakh, and 1 lakh 80,000 into my zero point 0.5 is 90,000. So 1 lakh minus 90,000 is coming out to be 10,000. Similarly for this one, 1 lakh into my zero point 0.5 is 50,000, and minus 20,000 into my zero point 0.5 is 10,000. So that means 50 minus 10 is 40,000. So I'll be getting 40,000 as my average for the second particular alternative, which is the construct a small plant, right? Last one is do nothing, so we'll be getting zero obviously, right? Then what you have to do is you have to select the maximum if it's a profit maximization problem, and if it's a cost minimization problem, then you have to select the minimum. But in our case, it's a profit maximization problem, so we'll be selecting the maximum, which is 40,000. That means if we'll construct a small plant, we'll be getting 40,000 on average revenue, right? So it's a equally likely or Laplace criterion which is used for making the decision making under uncertainty, right? So the last criterion or particular slide of this particular lecture is, or particular method is minimax regret, right? So it is based on opportunity loss or regret, right? What has to be done is we have discussed the process or steps to be involved. So this criterion is also known as opportunity loss decision criterion or minimax regret decision criterion because decision maker feels regret after adopting a wrong course of action, resulting in a opportunity loss of payoff. Thus, he always intends to minimize this regret. The working method is summarized as follows. From the given payoff matrix, develop an opportunity loss matrix as follows. Find the best payoff corresponding to each state of nature and subtract all other entries in that row from this value. The next step is for each course of action, identify the worst or maximum regret value, record this number in a new row, then select the course of action with the smallest anticipated opportunity loss value, right? So then you have to find the maximum opportunity loss for each alternative and pick the alternative with the minimum number. So I've discussed this in the next slide, how it has to be done, right? So what I've done is the for the states of nature, we have two states of nature. The first one is favorable market, and the next one is the unfavorable market. So what has to be done is we need to, subtract the opportunity cost. That means the maximum of the first row. So the maximum for the first row will be 2 lakh because we have three numbers. Like in this case, 2 lakh, 1 lakh, and 0. So the maximum is 2 lakh, right? So what I'll do is I need to subtract 2 lakhs from each of the numbers. So 2 lakh minus 2 lakh will be 0, 2 lakh minus 1 lakh will be 1 lakh, 2 lakh minus 0 will be 2 lakh, right? And for the similarly for the unfavorable market, the maximum is 0 because the other two numbers are minus 1 lakh 80,000 and minus 20,000, right? So the biggest number, the largest number is 0. So what I do is I have to subtract the 0 from each of the alternatives, I would say. 0 minus 1 lakh 80,000 is 1 lakh 80,000, 0 minus 20,000 is 20,000, and 0 minus 0 is 0. So this is the new matrix which we have calculated using opportunity loss, right? Then we need to find out I would say the minimum of each row and then sorry maximum of each row and then minimum of that particular new row, right? So in the first row the maximum is 1 lakh 80,000, in the second row the maximum is 1 lakh, and in the third row the maximum is 2 lakhs, right? So but out of these three numbers the minimum is 1 lakh. So I'll be the minimax regret criterion says that you should construct a small plant and the total revenue or profit you will be earning is 1 lakh rupees, 1 lakh dollars, right? So this criterion is called minimax regret method. So this is one of the most important ones which are used for calculating the decisions, right? So I've discussed all the five methods in the slides in my video lectures. Thank you so much.